Thank you, man. Love you. Sent. Good night. You know, I wish I should have called my brother or just called anyone, um, texting through instead of texting and maybe done something after reviewing this because now I would have been comfortable talking about something else other than this because this entire event is out of the question crazy. And I've said crazy stuff all the time, but this event not terrible than New Blood Rising in Vancouver WCW 2000 pay per view. This had moments, and with all due to respect, when you're trying to run a professional wrestling show or an MMA show or a boxing show, and you have title fights and main event stuff for pay per view, it depends on what type of stuff you're doing because they're all different. This entire event's crazy. They come out at Eastern Standard Time at 11:22 a.m. Former heavyweight king Alexander Usyk has arrived in Saudi Arabia to cheer on for AJ, and believing, considering he has worked together during their last two fights, trying to help out Joshua as best as he could. And I think it just goes to show you Usyk's reaction could almost say it all after the event because from 11:22 a.m. where he arrives and comes in at the wild amount of time until the main event around 5 or 6 p.m. Tops, the entirety has turned shockingly. They come in live for the main card, and the preliminary fights start out strong with a good opener. The first fight on the show is Frank Mango versus Zinyad Alamuf, where they're getting closer for the new upcoming preliminary fights. It takes them a while until then for a half an hour to get the fight over with. I'm just gonna get through the prelims because I'm not into it as much. But what I will say though, the preliminary fights are not terrible for what they are. They've shown their entertainment value really well to up the crowd. So nothing terrible could be said about this entire show as a whole. All in all, they did prove some interesting moments. So the entire fight went on from they went through a few rounds, boxing their way through, and around 12 p.m. during the early afternoon of p.m., Mango drops Ziad Alamuf in the fifth round. The fight was over at 12:07 p.m., which says on sportingnews.com, which I'm reading right now. But the fight itself had moments. I don't want to explain it. I want to get to the other fights, get through the prelims and everything else, and for the title fights. All in all, it was an entertaining fight for what it is. Does it mean that Ziyad has what it takes? The fight had surprising moments, a shocking moment there in the fight. So I'll give the first fight a 6 out of 10. Technically, I'm actually going to give it a 7 out of 10. I'll give the fight a 7 out of 10 for what it is, and technically, because at least it had some moments. It was an 8-round fight. It was really long for it is. It was an interesting squash moment, but now I'm going to give it 6 out of 10. Like, if it was a knockout coming to the end, I would have given it, but 8-round fight for prelims. Not terrible, but it's not better than Giza, but it still showed that surprising moment. But both guys had one defeat in their career, so there's nothing much to say about our Saudi Arabian buddy here, but it was good enough to understand for a good start for the show. The next fight at 20:20 p.m. was Lenny Patrat versus Alexander Krysiak, which this would be the last preliminary fight. For about some time, Krysiak needed only 2 rounds to take out Patrick to move up to 2-0. And surprisingly, with all due to respects, whether you think it was legit or not legit, he came in a good 2-round fight. The undefeated Lenny Patrick was 8-0-1 at the time. They entertained the fight, brought in an okay opener for the start. It ended quickly for what it was. There's nothing entertaining about the fight. It was just a normal, legit fight, but I'm going to give this fight a 6 out of 10 because it took a while for the first fight to end quickly, but it had moments. Alexander did okay for what he did to keep the Ukrainians alive. He was the only Ukrainian at the show and got Usyk in a happy mood for now. And then, well, at 1 p.m. So the fight went on from it. They only went on after 12:35 p.m. after the fight. So I'm sure they thought the fight might have gone the distance until 1 p.m., but nothing needs added. They went on, ended the show with 25 minutes left, and the main card of the show started at 1 p.m. At 1:14 p.m., it was rumored that Tyson Fury defeated Marius Watch on Friday and will be in the building. 4 minutes later, fighter Nishat Dev of India takes on Cesar Diaz on the opening of the main card. So, this right here has nothing interesting for me to say about this fight. So 6-0, undefeated Dev from India, now ranked number 120 in the super welterweight, takes on a 10-2 fighter from Peru named Cesar. This fight started out with a bang, came into the fight with a bang. Koji Tanaka, the referee, did try his best to take the fight as best he could. Dev came in, found the marks, finding great situations to up the ante. He puts in the opportunity here or there. He scores a knockdown. Cesar gets back up, gets knocked down again a second time. And by the third knockout, he comes and gets knocked out during the final few, but mostly around the time when he does, but coming to the end of the third knockout. He gets knocked down 3 times, and around 2 minutes and 56 seconds, Koji stops the fight by technical knockout. This fight is a good opener. I will say that. However, I will give this fight considering it ended really with a bang for an opener for a first round knockout, it would have been better if this was a 2 or if this was a 3-round fight just to build it off a lot longer, because I would have given this fight probably 5 out of 10 or maybe a 7 out of 10 just for how opener it was. But it ended quickly. There's no second gear taken in. Fighters were in first gear and the fight didn't go that much, so I would give it a 4 out of 10, but 4 out of 10. It was an interesting build-up. Fighter Dev and his victory here, I don't know if he has the opportunity to represent his country, but again, it's not that much to be said. Because Diaz got dropped in the late of the first round following a counter with Dev. He was hit several times due to body shots, due to craziness. And again, Dev was really hungry trying to end that fight. And he's not going to be the only fighter that's going to try to be really hungry to end a fight. Just keep that in mind. Diaz getting knocked down, getting back up, pouncing back. Dev comes in, drops him out the third. And the referee stops the fight with a 3 knockdown rule. But I don't think there was a 3 knockdown rule. But again, it was a great opener. great win to the start of it, and it was a great opener for everything else. After the fight was over, he stated that the future has arrived for him with ease, as believing, because they believe that Nishan Dev from India might become an interesting fighter. But yes, his fighter was 10-2. Again, I don't think he might have what it takes, not because of what country he's from, but if he can be in the right situation, trained properly to it, he might get better. But he does have to learn to handle more rounds in fights. He is a knockout fighter. He won the fight legit, his 7th victory and his 5th knockout. So, and he started since January last year ago. He's 25 years old. His other fights, not much, but his other fight against Juan Carlos on April the 25th in Las Vegas was a better fight on the undercard of Jarrell Miller versus Lanier Perot. And that fight ending in the 2nd round by knockout, I found that fight to be a better improvement for him. But again, he does have that power ability, but does he have what it takes to take on the legit fighters? Who knows? So rumors stated around 1:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Usyk went through the heavyweight landscape in a long bit with one of those men will be the future. One could face him at some point. So at this moment, we're just trying to understand what Usyk's mind is telling him, because at this moment, you got to handle your health. And I just don't think these boxers know what they're putting themselves through because of it. It's pretty tough. So around 2:03 p.m., Paul August versus Jacob Bank comes in for the battle of two undefeated fighters, 19-0 Jacob, 18-0 Paul August. Someone's though has to go for 37-0. This 8-round fight, nothing much to talk about. Technically, the entire fight comes in with August starting the fight off, landing several shots, pushing Banks to the ropes, but Banks using his jabs pretty much in the next rounds or so were pretty good in pushing him back. The first few rounds were a good start. They were both aggressive, trying to bring in Banks to the rope. And even though Banks hasn't been in a lot of pressure in his career, he has won every single round in all of his fights, except one of his fights that did had one of his fighters winning 2 rounds against him by a couple judges. But he has been on a good situation of having judges giving him rounds after round. So this fight right here had to prove how good he was. And that's what I like about this fight. This 8-round fight was pretty entertaining for what it was, with great hard body shots, everything going on. August trying to push Bank to the rope, Bank coming back. Around a few rounds later, around the 4th round, Bank landing out powerful shots, huge combinations from jab to hooks, pressing forward by August in the 5th round. Could not be that much to talk about. August was doing an okay job, but the problem was Bank found the opportunity of landing more punches. August was in the power zone, but the problem was I just couldn't see any rounds he won in those first rounds. I just couldn't see it. Jacob was finding the opportunity. He was around from the first half of the fight. Like, I'll give credit for August. He was putting in the pressure, but the thing was, he wasn't even taking a lot of punches given back. It was tough for what he was doing. Like, coming around the later rounds were hard enough for him to handle getting straight jab to the face by Bank and sometimes counter shots to the gut because those were the heavy, dangerous punches that Bank was doing. Jacob Bank from Denmark he's a damn good dude. I love Bank. And this fight right here, consider this fight went 8 rounds the distance. At least this fight had more to show for competition. Even if the fight was one-sided, at least August was putting in an unbelievable mass. If he had that one knockout opportunity, just like what happened to David Morrell last few months ago when he should have won the fight, but then got outbeat by a fighter that he thought he was going to win. And in the final round, the referee stopped the fight, and David Morrell lost when he was leading all by scorecards until the final round. So there were moments that I believe that Bank was going to have a problem, but no, he was in the viciousness. And even though the announcers believed that he was going to go for a stoppage, but around a quarter of 3 p.m., coming to the end of the fight, August in the final round tried to stalk Bank and as best he could. But considering in the latter of the fight, he was loose and unbothered by the exchange of blows in the final minutes. And unfortunately, Bank was just doing the better than he was. And by the time the bell rang for the final round, all three judges scored it 80-72. All rounds won by Bank. And that's how she wrote. I'm going to give this fight with Jacob Bank in his 20-0 record, breaking out Christopher Lovejoy's record, which Lovejoy almost got a 20-0 record if he did defeat Manuel Achar in 2021. Possible. This fight right here was good. I give this fight an 8 out of 10 because at least there were moments of the fight that Jacob Bank had to be tested by this person. He put in the opportunity. Both guys brought in a great heaviness against each other. It's just Paul was going for the knockout and Bank was winning rounds like nothing before. So this was another good performance for Bank. Bank came in and this was a far better fight than the Alamuth fight and the Mango in a preliminary fight. Yes, that fight ended in a knockout, but at least this fight had its moments to share. And I actually liked this fight really much. This was actually a pretty good fight. Unfortunately, after this, the ring ambassador around before 3 o'clock, ring ambassador Raito Tatsumi heads to the ring to face off Alvino Herrera. This fight scared me. Alvino is an 18-0-2 Mexican, Raito 4-0, but the thing is, Alvino has been in the situation for boxing for 10 years, since his debut in February 2016, which ended in a 4-round majority draw, but he continued winning a couple fights against other debut fighters, and he retired, came back in 2018, won a couple fights against nobodies, scored a majority draw again in 2019, and after that, had a few more fights, and that was it. He took a hiatus, 2 years off because of COVID, came back in October, and started winning fights, and it seemed like he was gradually getting better by time. He was winning fights mostly by knockout a little bit, and later on he was, because he was winning fights by points decision mostly, but by the mid part of 2023 and October of 2023 to right now, he was in a knockout streak. He had a record of 7 winning knockouts. Some of his fighters were like a 16-3-1 fighter back in 2024, which was his best fight. But everything else about his resume cannot be said to begin with. But again, he was a ranked 121 fighter, and Raito Tatsumi, he had to get the opportunity well done, because Raito was a great fighter. He started a great fight in his debut in Times Square last year ago, which was the best fight of the entire show, of that entire mess. Entertaining. And then he builds off another fight against a nobody, takes on a 7-2 fighter, goes to the Night of the Samurai, and defeats another top fighter from another country in 4 rounds, even though he had to earn it by barely having the guy beat him on, but he still gets in 4 rounds. But this fight was far better and more cleaner than his last fight against Leobardo. Herrera was in there. He was landing great shots and great jabs of body, right inside the body of Herrera. Herrera was just taking Tatsumi to the ropes. most of the time. Tatsumi was in the fast lane. He was gearing up first gear like never before. And he hooks on with great hooks of uppercuts. He drops Herrera to the ground with fast hand speed, drops him again with a straight jab, and rings the bell for round 1. This fight was pretty damn good. Left hands landed all over everywhere. He throws a left, drops Herrera. The referee sees enough, and referee Louis Pabin, who would be in the main event, who is Puerto Rican, not British, so no Mark Lyson, no Howard Foster, so keep that in mind. Louis Pabin, the referee of the main event tonight, who also was controversialized from the Alexander Povetkin and Marco Hulk fight, which that might be a fight I don't want to talk about. I don't want to criticize him for that, but this fight, but for the main event he did that same night, he's seen enough and stopped the fight. It makes you wonder, did he see enough to should have stopped the fight early in the main event? Considering that he's refereeing 2 undefeated fighters, one that's fought for under a year and one that's fought for 10 years. Again, there's a lot of problems to it. But again, Herrera was just not in the game plan. He just couldn't get nothing done. And so it was a good stoppage. He was enough to see it. He stopped at 28 seconds early in the round. So all in all, I'll give this fight a 5 out of 10. This was like a half fight because on paper, it was the 2 undefeated fighters putting their O's on the line. But this one went 2 rounds, and I wish it went a tiny bit longer, like 3 rounds. Maybe I would have given it 7. And maybe if Alvino did try to put pressure on Raito a lot more, but there was just no competition here for him. Like Raito had no competition here. It was just an easy win, better than ever. So yeah, with all that being said, next fight on the show at 3:36 p.m., Josh Kelly defends the IBS Super welterweight title against Agiarco. I can't pronounce his first name. Sorry, but he is an Irish boxer. Agiarco, 18-0, takes on 18-1-1 Josh Kelly. This entire fight did prove interesting for me to watch because it was a tough fight because Agiarco starts off the fight as best he could early in the fight, but Josh Kelly, I'm not going to get into this fight as much because the next fight on the title was crazy enough, but this fight was pretty good. Kelly was there responding to great shots, putting in great stuff from counters. He was there for great combinations. And he was settling it up. The thing was, this fight did have moments for the majority of it. Because the first half of this fight was just legit utter dominance. It was a pretty tough fight. This moment had it all there. By the first 3 rounds of the fight, it was just everything. We were getting out sharp hooks. Agiarco was putting out jabs, but again, Kelly was putting out great situations. He was pressuring everything else, going forward, putting everything in counters and hooks. Well, mostly for Agiarco, he was into counter shots and hooks as well. And Kelly was countering hooks and everything else. By the 4th round, where Agiarco tries to land a hook, landing hooks, and Kelly comes out with huge defensive work, it was hard because Kelly was putting in a good situation because nothing was working for Yarko. He got hit with a huge counter hook and a body shot and another damn shot downstairs and other stuff that was hurting him. And by round 5, the craziness got worse where Kelly unloaded a huge combination on him in the 5th round, and the worst was yet to come, where Yarko held Kelly to avoid a huge damage of clinching, and the champion comes out of nowhere and throws a shot in the back of the head on Yarko and put a cut on his cheek. Yarko tried to apply pressure before the round ended, and the referee and everything else, due to the shot in the back of the head, it stated that all of the judges gave the score a 10-8 score, but some people believe the score was a 9-9. I gave it a 10-8 score in the 6th round, which was the first round, I believe, won for Yarko, which was tough enough for me to understand because this was a dominant fight. The first 5 rounds were legit for anyone. And I think someone in the back thought round 4 was for Yarko. Someone said that some of the professionals believe that round 4 was given to Yarko, which I disagree. The first 5 rounds were legit wins for Josh. So whoever believed that round 4 was a win for Yarko, maybe there was opportunities, but again, it was hard for me to understand. And I have to start drinking this before it gets wet. Okay, so the first half of the fight, 5-1, or the point abduction, so make it 4-1. At this moment, it gets crazy because we come to round 6 and it just gets amazing because Yarko finally comes in with body shots. The referee gave Kelly a warning again with other parts going on and throwing jabs and other stuff. Multiple shots behind the head from Kelly with another hit. It's getting now dirty by the minute. Yarko comes in and wins the next round with ease. But then in round 7, in round 8, Yarko tries to throw a shot to Kelly's face. We get a double jab from him. Kelly throws in combinations. Yarko throws for a body shot. Body shots and shots to Kelly, but again, with all that being said, it wasn't like any of this was gonna happen. Like the 7th round was pretty good for what it was. Mostly for the 7th round, hooks and everything else. While round 8 was completely different, where there were other shots, but Kelly managed to hold himself together, getting hit in the face and such. But again, Kelly still did okay in the 8th round. And in the 9th round, more jabs and other stuff. Huge big shots. Yarko pushes Kelly. Hooks from Yarko, and Kelly opens up with combinations and body shots to end the round, to win his 6th round. So he comes back now getting 6 rounds, winning maybe 7 rounds. So at this moment, it's not like he has what it takes, but it's not like it's the end of the world, but it's not the end of the world. So after round 9, with everything going on with jabs, the championship rounds just get crazy, where Kelly lands more combinations, and of course we get some closer inspection that Kelly has his nose being broken. Kelly with body shots, combinations everywhere else. Yarko loses some momentum and manages to land some shots. Comes round 11, and Kelly is throwing in combinations and more hooks. Again, everything is there. Like with all shots from body, Kelly's nose is still now getting broken by the minute, but providing dangerous damage for the people to stop the fight. But Yarko's trying his best. Yarko does come into the final round, which I did give him the 12th and final round just for the fun of it, where even though we did have a counter uppercut in the final round, left hand landed by Yarko, uppercut to Kelly again. Kelly is bleeding hard, but still having the energy to finish the fight. comes in. Kelly, it was an interesting fight for what it was. I had the score 115 to 112. Two of the other judges, Marcus Morau and Cora Zapia, both have it 115 to 112. Nerman Adrovic had it 114 to 113, but those judges favored it by unanimous decision for Josh Kelly, the winner. British defeats Irish, but you know what? This was a really dirty fight. It was dirty, but I wish it was more entertaining, but I will give this match 5 out of 10 because it was an awesomely bad match for what it was, but again, there were moments of dirtiness, but again, there were moments that there were utter dominance, and it was hard for me to get used to that. But again, there's nothing much to say about it. Finally, we talk about Hamza Shiraz versus Simon Zechhuber. This fight for the WBO super middleweight is the worst. It's the worst fight I've ever seen for Shiraz. I did say that even though the fight was robbed for Carlos Adams should have defeated Hamza Shiraz, and I said, well, thank God he still keeps the belt, so that's good. And Shiraz comes in against the German Alan Bejic 2 months ago in Giza, wins, and now he's taking on another German fighter. So what gives? What gives is that this fighter was more better than Bejic. And I'll show you. But this fight was somewhat ridiculously out of the realm. This fight just was terrible. I just could not see the fight being that close enough. Shiraz comes into the fight reaching, pushing out his opponent, and even though Zechhuber goes for body shots and combinations by Shiraz and such, there were patience for both fighters, but I just found it to be a close round out for Huber. Same for round 2. Round 2 is another round for Huber where he was cautious in the fight. This fight was more cautious than the first fight, but body shots were being inventive for both fighters. And then after that, Shiraz comes in for the next few rounds, after 3 rounds, and just out of nowhere, just does the unthinkable. And I'm just shocked. He wins the next 4 rounds from throwing out body shots, landing out every single body attack. The body shots and hooks and uppercuts and other stuff from Shiraz, he just finally finds the opportunity. But again, seeing how Zechhuber was putting in other opportunities for body shots was tough enough. Now, of course, in round 7, there was a close moment in round 7 where we finally get some opportunities. Zechhuber comes in, starts out with combinations, body shots landed, all punching, everything there. It was a good round for round 7, but most people would believe that it was given to Shiraz. And then in round 8 was a close round for Shiraz where everything doesn't matter because we get a few punches by Shiraz. Again, Zechhuber was working hard in the fight, and Shiraz went to do more body shots. And the body shots were more of effectiveness and more winning rounds for Shiraz than I ever thought, and it's kind of surprises me. But again, he was winning the majority rounds, and come round 9, it just got shocking when Shiraz finally managed to dominate him. He throws an uppercut, puts out more body shots. Huber picks him up in the momentum. We get a great uppercut by Zechhuber, but at this moment, Shiraz has already won 6 rounds. But then in the last 3 rounds, which some people believe that not all of the rounds were won for mostly Shiraz, Huber comes in, and even though after 9 rounds we go to the championship rounds, Shiraz loses all his energy. He slows down and takes his time, and Huber, he pushes. There was a moment where Shiraz did push Huber, but even though he's keeping it simple and together, but I think Zechhuber put in more pressure in that 10th round. and even the 11th round where he put in solid combinations, and he was a more active fighter in the 11th round. But some people did believe that Shiraz was not in it for the 11th round. There were times for toughness in the 10th round. The 12th and final round, I will say, ended with a bang. Both put out body shots. They put their lights right into it with hard hooks, and Shiraz taken everything he can. But Zeckenhuber comes in, finishes off with a bang. I scored it 114-114. The last 3 rounds were scored for Zubinhuber. Antonio Margana had it 114-114, while one judge had it 115-113, and the other 116-112. Winner by majority decision, Hamza Shiraz. I just can't buy that. This fight was pretty much of a better fight than I could say on paper, but I just couldn't understand the fortitude. I was really disappointed for Shiraz in this fight. It was so disappointing that I decided to give it a 7 out of 10 because I just could not understand that fortitude for what it was, because I just felt really out of touch for this fight, and I just rest my case. But again, you viewers, you think what you believe, because it's my own opinion. We all have our own opinions, and that's the way life goes. But unfortunately, the real story comes in. Anthony Joshua versus Kristian Prenga. This fight blows. Now, guys, I was going to try to talk about the fight of the year of 1973, mostly for George Foreman being fighter of the year for only getting it because of going 2 rounds with Joe Frazier. Similar to 1923 when Jack Dempsey defeated Firpo from Argentina in 2 rounds, and that fight was fight of the year. And yes, that was moment because Firpo from Argentina knocked Dempsey out of the ring, and Dempsey came back around later and won the fight. And Foreman demolished Frazier. But again, those fighter of the year, this right here, I am almost thinking is fighter of the year. But this one just killed me. Like, Joshua, a fighter that's not in his prime anymore, they report Fury won the fight against an old past prime 46-year-old fighter. Kristian Prenga, that hasn't had a lot of great running in his career, all of his 20 fights by knockout. One of his fights were against a nobody that should have been a win for him by decision. He's 35 years old, not in his prime as much. An inch shorter than Joshua at 36 years old. So that right there says a lot. Now, the country from Albania did have their fighter, Zephyr Safari, fought for the interim belt against Fury in 2018 when Fury was making his first comeback after 2.5 years. The lineal weight title was on the line. If Zephyr won the fight, he would have been lineal weight champion. But the problem is, this was embarrassing. I just don't know how a British... It just makes you wonder. Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn have trained out so much. They're both British promoters, and their British fighters can get away with all of this. They get to take on fighters from other countries, win champions, and then fight against each other from their other British fighters, and they don't get to lose nothing because their British fighter can keep the title. That is legit. And then you see a fighter from another country puts in all his energy. Kevin Loranda did it on with Daniel Dubois, and Howard Foster is like, no, this fight's going to continue, even though Loranda knocked down Dubois 3 times, and Daniel Dubois, he injured his leg or his ankle, and the referee continued the fight. What is the point of that? I don't understand Howard Foster for that. It makes no sense. Now, with all due to respect about this fight, now it's stated that there was no 3 knockdown rule in this fight, and the thing was, if there was, because I was actually watching Counterpunch Boxing and his reaction to the fight during the time, and so I took time on not watching much of the fight. And when the start of the fight started, I just hear Counterpunch Boxing losing his mind, screaming everything out of the blue, and he just screams out, "Down goes Joshua." And I'm like, what? It's so ridiculous. You're telling me it only took like a few seconds. So it starts out with a few seconds. Joshua throws a jab, throws out a left. He goes from upstairs to downstairs. Again, and not even 20 seconds into the fight, Prenga, without hesitation, just scares off Joshua. And by the way, Joshua's body is so skinny, and Prenga, yes, he's not in his prime. He's in his mid-30s. So, but again, he comes in, throws out a right, throws a left, grabs onto the head of Joshua, loses his balance, gets an uppercut, and drops down Joshua. And at this moment, it's like, wow. The crowd, not even everyone is standing up. Barely a few people. He gets back up around the count of 4 or something. Lewis gives him a standing 8 count. And again, Joshua, I'm really upset about this fight. And I just want to end, I'm going to end this episode because I'm upset already. Because you see, with only 1 minute into the fight, with only 2 minutes of the fight, they show a reaction on the bottom left screen of Usyk's reaction. And as it cuts away from that, we get a little bit of a clinch. Lewis breaks the clinch. And Joshua tries to scare a jab off. Prenga knocks the gloves out of him for a couple left jabs. Throws a heavy right. And Joshua loses his balance. Another right, another left, right. And he's putting the clinch. Joshua's trying to clinch him, and Prenga doesn't want none of it because he's trying to put the energy. So he tries to put his forearm to get the heck out of Joshua because Joshua's grabbing him. And he's just grabbing around the ropes. It's ridiculous. But he finally throws on shots to the head, and for some reason, he brings Joshua down, throws out a right. They clinch, gets to a left, and slams his body to the ground. But that was Joshua's fault. That was Joshua. Like, you can see that Joshua was trying to F up with Kristian, and Kristian wanted to end the fight. But that's the dirtiness of British boxers. Like, they know they're in trouble, and it's just so ridiculous to see that. So it was a second knockout, but it was a slip and then count. But you get the point. He just comes in. He scored another knockout in the fight again, which was mostly there. Both are throwing heavy punches. The fight's over, 10-7. Joshua survives. Someone splashes water around him before he sits. It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. But then with only in the next round, he comes in. Prenga uses all his energy, and I guess he's trying to save it, but Joshua just says, F this fight. He goes in and gives him a hard time, throws at jabs, pushes him to the ropes, and he puts in everything he had on him. With 48 seconds left of the fight after a clinch was broken, we get a heavy swing and a miss by Joshua, gets a block head from here, and then before you know it, we get a jab, and then seconds later, with only 33 seconds left of the fight, of the second round, Joshua sets up another 2-punch combination, and that backs up Prenga. He gets a right, left, and then heavy hits right, and Prenga gets his body hit to the halfway off the ropes, and the crowd finally stands up, telling them to F off. And you want to know what the problem is? You want to know what's the problem about this? Lewis Padden turns around, tells Joshua to look, but there's also a guy with a black shirt on the white area of the neutral corner, the blue corner for Prenga and the red corner for Joshua, and someone in the crowd on Joshua's team climbs out of the ring, for crying out loud, and I don't even know why. Someone climbs out of the ring and someone tells them, no, get back in. Like, Lewis Padden is paying attention to Prenga, trying to count him, and Joshua's team, for crying out loud, tries to climb into the ring. Like, what is this? Derek Chisora and Deontay Wilder all over again? Like, someone enters the ring in the middle of a fight? What is going on here? Like, I was totally upset about this. And Lewis Padden double checks to see if Joshua's going to a corner. He doesn't go to a neutral corner. He's going to his own corner and not even going there. And he turns his back from the last second. This is like friggin' Carl Froch and Lucien Butte where Froch hits out Butte, but the referee didn't say, oh, that's the end of the fight. He just says, ah! Because he didn't say he stopped the fight because he thought Lucian Butte was knocked down by a stand because he was protected by the ropes, so he gave him a standing 8 count, but Eddie Hearn thought the fight was over, so he was celebrating too early. And Carl Froch's team told Eddie Hearn to F off before they get a disqualification. And Lucian Butte's team didn't do squat about it. And they thought the fight was over. He was still counting on Butte for a standing 8 count. And Butte's team comes in and he sees Butte and says, wait the fight. This is legit horror for boxing here. They didn't see it. That's not fair. I hope they don't count this as a win for Joshua. And I hope they don't. This fight, like, if it wasn't for that moment at the end, I would have given this 4.5 stars out of 10, being a good fight. But for what I just witnessed at the end there, how utter, I'm going to drop it to a couple and give this match a 7 out of 10. I'm sorry, the Jacob Bank versus August fight was just a little bit better for a 4-star match than this. And this killed me. I can't believe they went through that. I can't believe the fight ended that stupidly. And Eddie Hearn finally comes in, walks out behind from Joshua, celebrates the win, and it's like, I'm not buying that. I can't buy stupidity. They do see Usyk's reaction, and he's finally breathing, seeing Joshua win. But after what Fury did, taking on a guy that's 10 years older than him, and Joshua takes on a guy that's a year younger than him, and he did a good job, and Fury took on a past prime journeyman, seeing both of those happen 2 nights apart of each other from different areas out of their country, yeah, I don't think this fight is going to happen in 2026. I even have a feeling this fight might happen in 2027. I just don't see any good money being it for these guys. I just don't see Fury or Joshua even have an opportunity for a title fight. They did show a good replay of the ending knockout and seeing the crowd cheer and lose their mind. No one even cheered for Prenga winning by knockout. None of the people were even from Albania. Like, this was almost like thinking that Kristian Prenga was friggin' Nikolai Volkov from Mother Russia and Anthony Joshua is a real American of Hulk Hogan during one of their matches in the mid-'80s due to that whole situation of Hogan ripping off the Russian flag, Soviet Union after pinning, and then he spits on it, rubs his boot, and that's what this looked like. The crowd hated it. None of the crowd stood up to see when Joshua was knocked down twice. And even though they did think 3 knockdown, but it was only 2 knockdowns, but if it was a 3rd knockdown, would you think that it would have been counted for Lewis? Again, Joshua wasn't hurt that badly. I get it, but you see that that's just utter incompetence of a referee that doesn't get his stuff done. And there's competence of people thinking that Joshua won. It's like, yes, the knockout was devastating, and you think to yourself, oh man, God's a faggot. Why did he not give Prenga a good knockout on Joshua getting his head get hit in the back of the ropes, but it happens to Prenga? Like, what the point? I'm sorry, God, for saying that to you. But again, there's some people out there that might even say that this was rigged as stupidity. But you look back at it, and Prenga was too comfortable for his britches. He thought he had for Joshua. And Joshua just had to find the opportunity to survive. But this is not a good chance for him to be in the heavyweight anymore. And if Fury has what it takes to make another heavyweight title fight for 2028 in his 20th year of boxing, good luck. But the last thing I want to say before I end this month of July is I want you guys to go back and try to watch the George Foreman and Joe Frazier fight. And think to yourself if that fight deserves to be Fight of the Year. I am highly watching it because it's the first ever show on HBO Boxing. Even though I'm still trying to see if there's fight footages of the fight that same night and seeing information. If you guys have any information for that, help me out here, but I doubt it. And understand, because I was thinking this was going to be Fight of the Year. And if this fight does become Fight of the Year, man, 3 fights for 2-round knockouts in since Ring Magazine of 1922. That's ridiculous. But you know what? It might not happen. All in all, ridiculous enough, but you know what? This entire show was crazy and other things happened before. But you know what? I'm glad I'm done with it, because I would highly recommend just watching professional wrestling pay-per-views after this and just take a break, because at this moment I'm wasted, and that's all I have to say. That's all I have to say for that. Sorry for Prenga, didn't get an opportunity for this, but it is what it is. Does Nelson Heisa have what it takes to take on this fighter? Would have to wait for the future, because that's all I have to say. So, but yeah, lots of luck, everyone, and take care, everybody.